Hi everyone, my name is Maria Van Vuklis. Welcome to another episode of the Think Tank podcast. I've got the lovely Monique Peters here, who is the founder and owner of Brain Wise Learning. Monique actually started Brain Wise Learning after finding about neuroscience and the programs around neuroscience to actually help her son with his auditory processing. And she actually utilized a lot of methods from the Brain Wise That Changes Itself by Dr. Norman Doidge. She later worked with speech pathologists who brought the program to Australia as well. So that's pretty incredible. She also supported other parents on a similar journey that she's actually gone through herself with her own son, and currently utilizes these methods to be able to create a growth mindset and improve compliance and outcomes for other students and other people who are experiencing similar problems. Her business and skills are needed and used to be able to fulfill the dream to improve learning and life outcomes for her own clients. Welcome, Monique, to this episode.
Thank you, Marie. Lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. I'm really excited about what we'll be talking about today, about neuroplasticity and growth mindset. So before we actually get into the questions, I'd love to know a little bit more about yourself if I haven't already covered it.
Okay, well, you covered it very, very well, but what I'm finding is starting a business with the knowledge of neuroplasticity extremely helpful. So I don't think I would have been able to do it if I didn't know how to use my brain. So that's what neuroplasticity is. We'll talk more about that later, but understanding how your brain learns, how you can develop skills, having a growth mindset just helps you so much in being able to persevere. Understanding that there's a lot more in the process rather than the result.
You must be so passionate about what you do since you've been utilising that in your business now. Is that correct?
That's right, because the hope of neuroplasticity helps so many children. It helps people recover from strokes now. It helps people with so many different things. Just that we see the brain so differently than we did 20 years ago. So yeah, there's an incredible hope that comes from neuroplasticity. So once you understand what it is and how it works, you can recover from strokes better, you can recover from brain injury better. Learning difficulties can become a thing of the past. Learning how memory works, how we can develop memory, how we can strengthen attention and focus skills is a real game changer for a lot of people and brings an awful lot of hope.
So could you tell me more about Carol Dweck's work in the growth mindset, as that's the main thing that you implement in what you do?
Yeah, because really when it comes to learning and it comes to everything mindset, as your audience knows with NLP, it's so important what you say to yourself. That language does actually get wired into your brain. So with every thought you have and every action you take, and even if that's just speaking and using words, that all gets wired into your brain so that you have the facility and the capacity to do that. With a growth mindset, there's a lot more focus on the process of going through the journey rather than focusing on just the result. Okay, so Carol Dweck has some lovely talks on YouTube from TED Talks and things like that about it. But one of the most popular things she'll talk about is the power of yet. So when you can change a child's language from I can't do this to I can't do this yet, it can make such a powerful difference in their mind. And it just introduces that possibility of going beyond. Because when you say I can't, then you tend to stop there. And if a teacher is trying to teach you more, and you're needing to learn more skills, but your mind is at a block and it says, no, I can't do that, then you don't want to go further and you start to build up anger and you start to build up frustration and all sorts of things. And I see a lot of children by year one, by 6 years old, and they've developed already a really negative attitude towards school because they're not coping with learning to read. So being able to say to themselves, I can't do this yet, introduces this amazing possibility. And then we can take them further from there once we get past that.
Absolutely. And I'm, totally on board with what you're saying, because language is a key component, linguistics, that is, of NLP specifically. And, language can be used in many different contexts, whether it's in growth mindset or NLP specifically. And I love how you mentioned that training children to just utilize that one word as such a young age, because if they're taught by family or their environment to use what we call negation words, so it deletes everything else, it limits the possibilities that can create. So I love how you mention that specifically, that creates more resources and opportunities for children to think about things in a much more bigger scope.
Yep, that's
Yeah.
right. But the growth mindset is also a few other interesting things. So I actually did very well in primary school. Everything came quite easily to me, and I didn't learn about making an effort or putting that effort into the process. So when I got to high school and things became a bit more difficult, I thought, well, I don't have to do that effort sort of thing, because I thought I was quite intelligent and I thought I had it all. So I was arrogant when I was 12,
Yeah.
But I didn't learn about making an effort. So by the time I got to year 10, I thought, well, I was smart once, but I'm really dumb now. And I based my life decisions on that. So, which was a real shame.
Yeah.
I've made a lot of life choices that, I didn't go to year 12, for example, at the time. So I missed out on, I wanted to be a teacher when I was younger, but I didn't do all those things. And I had a very satisfying career and all those sort of things. But it's nice now that I've come back to learning, because that is my passion. But I did. And if you can imagine how limiting that can be for many, many people.
Absolutely. And, it always starts from such a young age that can definitely impact the decisions that you make, as an adult in later times. So tell me, why is neuroplasticity important to your brain, and how do you actually process information?
Okay, well, it's really interesting because even though we've just sort of discovered it because of fMRI, we can actually measure it in the brain, so we can see what parts of the brain are getting more blood flow, so we can see where there's more neural activity. Before that, we hadn't really been able to see it, and so learning was just a process that we just thought happened. So we do know that brain plasticity is better when we're younger. And I have a story of a boy who was born with 2% of a brain in England. He's an incredible story. His name is Noah Wall, and it was a life-threatening situation. He wasn't actually expected to survive with 2% of a brain. But they found, because they didn't leave him in a bed and just make him comfortable and feed him until he did pass away, they actually got him up and they got him moving, and they stimulated his body. And so his central nervous system and his peripheral nervous system was connecting to his brain, the boy. So when he was born, they realised that he only had 2% of a brain because water had entered his brain and it couldn't grow. So in the old days, they would have left him to pass away. Unfortunately, sadly, they would have looked after him and cared for him. But in these days of neuroplasticity and understanding what it is, they actually stimulated his whole body. They stimulated his nerves to connect to his brain, because neurons are nerves.
So tell me, why is neuroplasticity important, and how do we actually process information?
Okay, so it's really important because it is what the brain has been doing since it's been evolving for 4 or 5 billion years now. So as we think and feel and do something, the neural cells in our brain start to make connections. And there's actually about 100 billion neurons or thinking cells in our brain. And they're capable of about 30 to 40,000 connections. So every time you think, feel, or do something and repeat it, the neurons try to connect. And they actually connect through your spinal cord to the rest of your body and make your muscles move and make your body move. So even your speech muscles, as we're learning language and acquiring language, We baby babbles, so that with that ba 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 ba, and we're actually learning how to use our muscles to coordinate with those sounds. It's actually a very, very important process for learning, the picking up of language. But so neuroplasticity is something that the brain does by itself. It's completely neutral. So whatever you keep doing is how you wire your brain. So which is why it's really important how we talk to ourselves and how we think and how we feel about things. In something like post-traumatic stress, that wiring goes a bit crazy because of a very traumatic event, and it goes on a sort of a loop. But there are ways of working with as specialists, not me because I'm with learning issues, but there are people that use the idea of neuroplasticity to rewire. And I think NLP does that because it's using language.
Absolutely. There's neurons that appear all the way throughout the body, and this is why they say the brain is the processor, but where everything is stored is actually stored in the neurons itself, which is why it's really important to reprogram, because it has an effect on every cell and every part, even to the structure of DNA in the body. So I think it was Deepak Chopra in his book Quantum Healing, he actually talks about that. So yeah, I absolutely love that stuff, and I find it quite fascinating.
It is a really good demonstration of the process is when a child learns to walk. So you can see that they're really bumbly at first and they fall and they keep going. Babies have a great attitude to learning. They just keep going and they don't worry about, oh, I don't feel like walking today. I won't do that. So they just get up and they keep doing it. But what's happening is their neural pathways are developing and they're getting stronger. And then if they keep going, they start running, they start, they're dancing even, all those, it's all a matter of those neural pathways connecting, forming, there's a layer that goes over the top of the neurons called myelin, which helps the electrical signals travel much faster and more efficiently. And then the more you do something, the more graceful you become. So even someone learning a piano, for example, when you see a child learning how to play a piano, they're sort of a bit awkward and bumbly all over the place. But as they practice more, their muscles become more refined, more graceful. And that's the process of the neurons connecting, myelinating, and getting better. And we can use that with any skill that we grow, that we want to become better at.
And is that at any age, or is it only specifically
it
the
is
age
at
of
any
children?
age?
Okay, amazing.
It is at any age. That's
Amazing.
been the very big exciting thing, that it's a whole lot more, our brain is a lot more plastic in older age than we thought it was. So
okay.
it is harder, and there are less neurochemicals, so less of the dopamine and serotonin and things that boost, or there's a particular chemical called BDNF, which is very important for neural growth, and there is less of that. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. So there are actually neurons growing in our brain to help us cope with dying, for example.
So I guess that's why children are able to learn 4 languages. It's easier for them than what it is for an adult to learn 4 languages at the same time.
Right. That's exactly right. And it's very interesting too with cultural things. So with there's different sounds in different languages and in different cultures. So I grew up speaking Dutch, so I can make some Dutch sounds that English people can't, for example, and so on. And that's a matter of, it's all the hearing. So you have to hear those sounds in order to be able to recreate them. And that's a very important process of learning. And that's where it goes wrong for children who are learning at times, because they haven't acquired the language skills. And that's, reading is actually a process of language. So if they haven't acquired the language well, that's why they often struggle with spelling and reading.
Okay, so then tell me, how does the change in neuroplasticity affect our behaviour and how we learn?
That's really interesting. I love that question, because it's actually the other way around. So it's, so neuroplasticity reacts to what we do. So we are totally responsible for wiring our own brain. So if we have a brain that tends to think negatively, that's because we've thought a lot of negative thoughts. if we decide to change that around, or when you change a habit is a good example. When you say you're a smoker and you don't want to be a smoker anymore, you have to rewire those pathways, because you've developed, with every cigarette that you've had, you've developed neural pathways to do that more efficiently.
Absolutely.
So if we think of, I always think of learning as the new survival, because our brains have evolved over millions, billions of years of surviving. And it's important for, say, memory, for example. We needed to know where to go back to food sources. We needed to know what times of the year were safe, where to find shelter, all those sorts of things. And it's taken billions of years for that to evolve.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's so much that we still don't know that is beyond our capabilities of coming to conclusions, because there's so many intricacies within the human body, specifically around consciousness and the connection to the brain and the nervous system as well. Yeah, so I absolutely share your same passion.
Well, I often think of, you know, that picture of Adam touching God's hand. I think it's a famous Michelangelo painting. I actually think that it's the neurons. So the neurons are where we take ideas and put it into action. So everything we see around us that has been built, that has been formulated in our society, the food that we have, you know, prepared, everything, that's all a result because of our neurons.
And I love how you referred back to that picture. It's such a metaphorical kind of symbol where people can look at now and go, oh yeah, it actually is. That I can see that
truly
now.
Believe it is. Yeah, that's where God touches us. Like, yeah.
Fantastic. So what causes a decrease in neuroplasticity, and how do we prevent this, or can we?
Well, aging, some will die off, particularly if there's something like Parkinson's or dementia happening. But something that I heard a neuroscientist talking about not so long ago was looking at how, as we age, for example, we're losing balance on our feet. And they were thinking that that's the result of wearing shoes. So actually walking around bare feet, you're contacting the ground more, and you're feeding the neurons or the neural pathways for balance. Walking in shoes may be detrimental to that as we age, and that's why we might be getting. So that's something that they're investigating at the moment, which is really interesting.
Wow.
It's just non-use. So as much as the brain wires according to what you're doing and what you're repeating, what you're not repeating, it doesn't necessarily die off, because if you have a habit, you know what it's like, say the smoker again, we'll go back to the smoker. If they pick up a cigarette again, then all that neural pathways light up again, but you can make them less effective. I used to be a smoker and I don't think of smoking anymore. It's been a long, long time. So those neural pathways, I don't think they're completely died off, but they're at a point where I don't think about, when I'm stressed, I don't go for a cigarette anymore. So it's non-use. So what you don't use tends to die off. Not die off, but lessen. And new pathways form for what you're trying to achieve now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, if you use it, you lose it, that kind of saying. But if you exercise a muscle, it gets stronger. But if you don't, it starts to deteriorate. It's still there, but it's not as strong. So
yeah, well, it's interesting you say that, because that's what we talk about now, and that's how I talk about with my kids. Is we see the brain as a muscle. It's just like a muscle. Yeah.
So what are some other ways that we can actually rewire our brain to actually increase growth mindset?
Okay, so if you've grown up with a negative attitude to your achievements, as much like I did, just knowing you can change it. So the growth mindset is being taught in a lot more schools these days, which is a wonderful thing, and children will learn about neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is a key component of the growth mindset. So understanding how that neuroplasticity works, so that whenever you want to change a habit or improve your performance or pick up a new skill, you know that you can do it. You know, it's a matter of persevering, using the right language, and you know it depends on you. It's your decision. Your neuroplasticity is completely neutral, so you have full agency, full power over how you wire your brain.
Mm. You take it, it's all your own personal responsibility.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
up to you.
Yeah. Okay. And how does neuroplasticity affect our productivity at work?
Oh, this is really interesting. So in Silicon Valley in particular, in America, there's a lot more movement to understanding what neuroplasticity is and how they can use it. Growth mindset is extremely huge. In organizations such as Google and Microsoft, they're increasing the sort of soft skills like collaboration, communication, those sort of things. With a growth mindset, because the focus is on the process, people are less likely to judge people by the outcome they present. So they're not afraid of mistakes. They see mistakes as a feedback system. So if you can imagine a team working together, if you've got that old sort of fixed mindset where they just want to look good because they're achieving good results and so on, that's all very well. But the modern way to think is let's advance from the progress and the process that we're making. What you find is that people are more open, they're more sort of psychologically safe. There's a lady called Amy Edmondson who talked about being psychologically safe at work. And when you have that, people feel more like taking risks. So you're getting greater results because you're not afraid to take risks. You're eager to learn from your feedback rather than hiding your mistakes or cheating or blaming someone else for them. And that takes away a lot of workplace stress. So you've got a really good team to go forward if they've all got this growth mindset.
So if I'm hearing right, so using a feedback system to be able to continually encourage someone to grow within their own skills and self so they can perform better at work. Is that right?
That's true, and when you're practicing that yourself, you're more likely to recognise the potential of growth in others, which is a big thing in workplace happiness or, you know, workplace psychological safety. If you've got a team that is not congruent with that, or that is congruent, sorry, I should say, then you've got people who foster each other's growth. And because they're not afraid of mistakes, they're much more able to go forward, taking risks and just learning from the process.
Absolutely, and I think that's so valuable for any sort of working environment, whether it be at home at the moment, in, you know, people having to work from home, or in, you know, corporate offices. So yeah, that's a really great point.
That's right. Well, can you imagine how many neural pathways we've all grown?
Yeah, exactly.
Learning these new skills at home and so on. So
absolutely. So tell me, how do we improve people's speech, or how do you improve people's speech and memory?
So I've got amazing programs that have got about 40 years of brain research behind them. And what they do is give a lot of repetition on things like putting beeps in the right order. And that sounds incredibly basic, I know, but when they do that hundreds of times, well, let's get more specific. If children can't remember things sequentially, then they don't remember them very well. And these are the children who can't remember instructions, for example. So we give them all these beeps, and the brain is wiring while they're trying to put all these beeps in the right order. And what we find is when they go through that particular exercise, they begin to remember instructions better. So, which is really, really amazing. The other thing that happens is the development of, like I was talking about before, is in the acquiring language stage.
Yeah.
Some children I work with, and we're working with the sound but they hear it, for example. So you can imagine how that causes problems with reading and spelling. So the programs I work with put that phonemic map in place,
Yeah.
so that they can hear each phoneme well, and so they can spell words better, read better, and comprehend better.
Okay, fantastic. That sounds incredible.
It is. It's wonderful work. It's not work.
Absolutely. When you do what you love, you don't call it work, or
That's
you
right.
just do it because it's just so enjoyable. So tell me, do you have any sort of resource material that you could give access to the listeners to be able to increase or improve their memory and their learning around this specifically about increasing neuroplasticity?
Oh, yes. Well, because you can choose any time to improve your memory or any skill that you like. So if you want a better memory, start remembering more things. When I was younger, we used to have to remember a whole bunch of phone numbers, which we don't need to do now because we carry them around in our phones. So things like that, just do more activities that you're not good at and push yourself at them. And that way you'll develop anything. I just bought a book from a fellow called Jim Quick, and he was a fellow who was born with, he had an accident in class, and he developed a brain injury, and he struggled with learning for a long time, but now he's a memory expert. He can remember amazing things. If you've ever seen him on Mind Valley or anything like that, he's got a phenomenal memory, and that's just because he exercised it. He found ways of exercising it. I can't wait to read this book. I've only just got it. But yeah, it's anything you want to do, you just do it more and more, and you'll improve anything. It's limitless.
That's right. Keep flexing that muscle and it'll only get stronger, isn't that right?
That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Amazing.
And be kind to yourself as well.
Beautiful.
So yeah, be kind to yourself.
Thank you so much, Monique. It's been such a pleasure having you on here. Where can people connect with you if they want to find out more about what you do?
So my website is www.brainwiselearning.com.au. I'm also on Facebook as Brainwise Learning. I have a Facebook group called Hope for Struggling Learners Australia, where I introduce people to the idea that neuroplasticity can help with learning issues.
Thank you so much. And thank you for listening and tuning in. My name's Maria van Vuklis from The Conscious CEO. Remember to be bold, be brave, and have fun. Till next time, bye for now.